The Krathix fleet moved through space like a swarm of metal insects. 200 warships, each one painted in deep crimson, crossed into the outer edges of the Sol system. Inside the command ship, War Admiral Zekthor stood tall on his 6 legs. His warriors watched him with respect and fear. The Krathix had never lost a battle. They had crushed 47 star systems in just 3 years. Zekthor looked at the screen showing Earth. The small blue planet seemed peaceful and quiet. The humans who lived there had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. Their ships were slow and basic. Their weapons were simple metal projectiles thrown by chemical explosions. To the Krathix, humans seemed weak and helpless. "Send the message," Zekthor ordered. His voice clicked and hissed in the dry air of the command deck. The communication officer pressed several buttons. A message traveled across space to Earth. It was simple and direct. Surrender now or face total destruction. The Krathix would accept nothing less than complete control. On a space station orbiting Jupiter, the leaders of the Galactic Council watched. They had seen this many times before. The Krathix would arrive, demand surrender, and then crush anyone who resisted. The Council had tried to help other species in the past. Nothing worked. The Krathix shields were too strong. Their weapons were too powerful. Ambassador Veltoth from the ancient Zerion Empire shook his head. "The humans do not stand a chance," he said quietly. "They have only been in space for 50 years. The Krathix have conquered species with thousands of years of experience." Other ambassadors agreed. Some felt sorry for humanity. Others simply did not care. War was common in the galaxy. Strong species survived. Weak species did not. That was the natural order of things. Back on Earth, the message from the Krathix played in the United Terran Council chambers. The room fell silent. President Sarah Chen read the message 3 times. Her face showed no emotion. Around the table, military commanders and government leaders waited. "What do we know about them?" Chen asked Admiral Marcus Webb. Webb pulled up data on the main screen. "The Krathix have never lost a battle. Their shields can stop almost any weapon. Their plasma guns can burn through ship hulls in seconds. They heal damage to their ships with some kind of living metal. Other species fear them greatly." "How long do we have?" Chen asked. "They will reach Mars in 4 days," Webb replied. "Earth in 6, Chen stood up. She looked at each person in the room. "Activate emergency fleet protocol. Send the signal to all hidden shipyards. Begin evacuation of all civilian stations. Move everyone to the underground shelters on Earth and Mars." "What about the Krathix message?" someone asked. "Should we respond?" Chen's face grew hard. "Send them silence. Let them wonder." Across the solar system, hidden doors opened. On the dark side of the moon, massive hangar bays came to life. In the asteroid belt, rocks that looked natural split apart to reveal secret construction yards. Under the ice of Europa, Jupiter's moon, lights turned on in vast underground facilities. The Terran Defense Force had been preparing for this moment for decades. Humanity had learned hard lessons from its own history. War was always possible. Peace was always temporary. You prepared for the worst and hoped for the best. The ships that emerged were not beautiful. They had no elegant curves or bright colors. They were gray boxes covered in armor plates and weapon ports. Human warships were built for one purpose only: to fight and to survive. On the Krathix command ship, War Admiral Zekthor waited for a response from Earth. Hours passed, then a full day. Still no answer came. "They are cowards," one of his officers said. "They hide in fear," Zekthor laughed. It was a harsh clicking sound. "Let them hide. We will drag them out." He turned to his navigator. "Set course for Mars. We will destroy their shipyards first. Show them what happens to those who ignore the Krathix." The Crimson Fleet moved forward. Across the galaxy, other species watched through their long-range sensors. Many placed bets on how quickly humanity would fall. Some gave them a week. Others said 3 days. Nobody expected them to last a month. But there was one thing the galaxy did not know about humans. Humanity had nearly destroyed itself many times. Asteroid impacts had blocked out the sun and killed millions. Climate change had turned fertile lands into deserts. A brief nuclear war had turned 2 cities into glass. Each time, humanity had survived. Each time they had learned to adapt. They had learned to prepare. Most importantly, they had learned that survival meant being willing to pay any price and make any sacrifice. Other species fought for glory and honor. Humans fought because they refused to die. In the training rooms of the Terran Defense Force, soldiers prepared for battle. They had trained for scenarios other species considered impossible. What if your ship loses power? Keep fighting. What if your weapon systems fail? Ram them. What if half your crew is dead? The other half keeps going. This was not confidence. This was not bravery. This was something deeper and older. This was the stubborn refusal to give up that had carried humanity through ice ages and plagues and wars. Every human alive came from a long line of survivors. As the Krathix fleet approached Mars, a single transmission went out on all military channels. Just 3 words in simple text: "Fleet is ready." The galaxy was about to learn what humanity meant by those words. The Battle of Mars began at dawn, though there was no real dawn in space. The Krathix fleet appeared in orbit like a blood-red cloud. War Admiral Zekthor stood on his command deck and smiled. Below him, the surface of Mars showed only abandoned buildings and empty shipyards. "They ran away," his weapons officer said. "The shipyards are empty, no ships. No defenses, nothing." Zekthor felt disappointed. He had hoped for at least a small fight. "Begin bombardment. Destroy everything. Leave nothing but dust. Let the humans see what happens when they ignore us." The Krathix warships opened fire. Plasma beams lanced down toward the Martian surface. The old shipyard structures exploded in bright flashes. Metal melted and stone turned to glass. It seemed like an easy victory. Then the sensors started screaming. "Contacts," the sensor officer shouted. "Multiple contacts. Behind the planet." They were hiding in the magnetic shadow. 89 human warships appeared from behind Mars. They had been waiting there, using the planet's natural magnetic field to hide their energy signatures. The Krathix sensors had seen nothing until it was too late. The human ships did not look impressive. They were boxy and plain, no elegant designs, no bright colors, just gray metal and weapons. But they moved with purpose and speed. "Battle formation," Zekthor ordered. His fleet began to regroup. The Krathix had fought many battles. They knew their tactics were superior. Their shields were stronger, their weapons more powerful. This would be quick. The first human ship to reach the Krathix line was a destroyer named the Relentless. Its shields flickered under plasma fire. Its hull began to glow from the heat. Any normal ship would have pulled back to repair. The Relentless kept coming. "They are not retreating," the Krathix tactical officer said, confused. "Their shields are failing. Why do they not retreat?" The Relentless smashed directly into a Krathix cruiser. The impact tore both ships apart. Metal screamed. Fire bloomed in the vacuum of space. The human ship died, but it took the Krathix vessel with it. "They rammed us," Zekthor said slowly. "They deliberately rammed us." He had never seen such a tactic. It was wasteful. It was barbaric. It was insane, but it worked. More human ships pushed forward. They did not try to stay at safe distances. They did not protect their formations. They charged directly into the Krathix fleet, breaking the careful battle lines. When their weapons ran dry, they used their ships as weapons. A human cruiser called the Defiant lost half its hull to plasma fire. Its crew should have abandoned ship. Instead, they turned toward the nearest Krathix dreadnought and fired their remaining nuclear missiles at point-blank range. The explosion destroyed both ships and damaged 3 others nearby. "They are sacrificing themselves," the Krathix tactical officer said. "They trade one ship to destroy one of ours. This is not logical. They will run out of ships." Zekthor watched the battle with growing unease. The Krathix were winning. Their shields held better. Their weapons hit harder. But the humans would not stop. They would not retreat. They would not surrender. Ships that should be destroyed kept fighting with fires burning inside them and holes in their hulls. On the human command ship, Admiral Marcus Webb watched the tactical display. His face was grim. "Status report," he ordered. 19 ships destroyed. 15 more with critical damage. But we have eliminated 31 Krathix vessels and damaged 27 others. The tactical officer paused. "Admiral, the Defiant is gone. The Relentless is gone. The Indomitable just lost life support." Webb nodded. Each name was a list of people he knew. Friends, colleagues. Thousands of lives gone in minutes. But he did not hesitate. "Order all ships to continue the attack. No retreat. No surrender." The Krathix began to pull back. For the first time in 3 years, they retreated from a battle. Not because they were losing. They were still ahead in ship count. But because they realized that humans did not care about ship count. Humans would trade 10 ships to kill one Krathix vessel if that is what it took. They fight like animals. Zekthor said quietly. No honor, no glory. Just rage and violence. He turned to his navigator. Fall back to Jupiter orbit. Call for reinforcements. We need more ships. As the Krathix fleet withdrew, the remaining human ships did not pursue. They regrouped and began rescue operations. 34 human ships were destroyed. 55 remained, many of them damaged. But 67 Krathix warships were gone or crippled. Across the galaxy, the species watching through their sensors sat in stunned silence. The Krathix had retreated. The undefeated Empire had pulled back from a battle. Against humans. Against the species everyone said would not last a week. Ambassador Veltoth watched the recordings again and again. They did not win, he said to his aides. They lost more ships, but the Krathix ran away. He could not understand it. How did they do this? A younger ambassador from a warrior culture spoke up. The humans do not fight to win gracefully. They fight to make victory cost everything. The Krathix realized that destroying humanity would destroy most of their fleet. On Earth, President Chen received Admiral Webb's report. She read the casualty numbers. 40,000 dead, ships that took years to build, gone in hours. But she also read the other numbers. The Krathix had lost a third of their invasion fleet. Send a message to all shipyards, she ordered. Begin construction of replacement vessels. And activate Phase 2. Her aide looked confused. Phase 2? But we just finished Phase 1. The enemy thinks we committed our full fleet. Chen allowed herself a small, cold smile. That is what we wanted them to think. The ships at Mars were our older vessels. We held back the newer ones. When the Krathix return with reinforcements, they will find a surprise waiting. In orbit around Jupiter, Zekthor sent a message to the Krathix homeworld. He requested 300 additional warships. His superiors granted the request immediately. No species had ever bloodied the Krathix fleet like this. It was an insult that could not stand. They would return with overwhelming force and crush humanity completely. But as the Krathix licked their wounds and waited for reinforcements, the humans prepared. Hidden factories worked around the clock. New ships joined the fleet. Crews trained for the next battle. They had hurt the invaders. Now they would finish the job. The galaxy watched and waited to see what would happen next. For the first time in centuries, the outcome of a Krathix invasion was uncertain. 3 weeks passed. The Krathix reinforcements arrived in waves. 500 warships now filled the space near Jupiter. War Admiral Zekthor had never commanded such a large force. This was the largest invasion fleet the Krathix had ever assembled. This time we will not underestimate them, Zekthor told his officers. We will crush them with pure numbers. 500 ships against whatever remains of their fleet. They cannot win. The massive armada began moving toward Earth. The sensors showed no human ships between Jupiter and Mars. The path was clear. Perhaps the humans had finally realized they could not win. Perhaps they would surrender. They were wrong. As the Krathix fleet passed the asteroid belt, the sensors exploded with contacts. Human ships appeared from everywhere. Behind asteroids. Inside hollowed-out rocks. From hidden stations. Not 50 ships. Not 100. 400 human warships emerged to face the Krathix. Impossible, Zekthor shouted. We destroyed their fleet at Mars. Where did these ships come from? His intelligence officer pulled up the data, his hands shaking. Admiral, these ship signatures are different. These are newer vessels. The humans hid their true fleet strength. The ships at Mars were bait. They wanted us to think we had seen their full force. Zekthor felt cold fear for the first time in his military career. The humans had tricked them. They had studied Krathix tactics during the first battle and prepared counters. This was not a desperate last stand. This was a carefully planned defense. The Battle of Luna began with a human ship doing something no Krathix warrior could comprehend. A damaged destroyer called the Unyielding, its weapon systems completely destroyed, turned directly toward a Krathix battleship and accelerated to full speed. Target that destroyer, a Krathix weapons officer shouted. It has no weapons. It cannot hurt us. The Unyielding took hit after hit. Its hull glowed red. Pieces of armor flew off, but it kept coming. At the last moment, the crew ejected in escape pods. The empty ship, now just a missile of metal and momentum, struck the Krathix battleship at tremendous speed. Both vessels exploded in a ball of fire and twisted metal. They are using their ships as weapons again, the tactical officer said. But now they are doing it deliberately. Planning for it. Training for it. More human ships pushed forward. They worked in coordinated groups. 3 destroyers would focus fire on one Krathix ship, while 2 others positioned themselves for ramming attacks. When Krathix vessels tried to pull back, human fighters that should have run out of fuel continued attacking, their pilots having saved just enough power for one last missile run. A human carrier called the Resolute was hit by plasma fire. Its flight deck was destroyed. Its engines were damaged. The ship could barely move. Rather than retreat, the captain ordered the ship to drift toward the moon. As it approached, it launched all remaining fighters from its internal bays. Then the damaged carrier deliberately crashed into the lunar surface, using the impact to create a massive debris field that destroyed a Krathix cruiser pursuing the fighters. Zekthor watched in horror as his careful battle plans fell apart. The humans did not follow normal tactics. When their shields failed, they kept fighting. When their weapons went offline, they used their ships as weapons. When their life support systems collapsed, the crews put on emergency suits and manually fired the remaining guns. They are not warriors, Zekthor said quietly. They are survivors. They do not care about honor or glory. They only care about winning. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Krathix had more ships and better technology. But every Krathix victory came at a terrible cost. To destroy one human ship required damaging 2 or 3 Krathix vessels. The mathematics of war turned against them. Finally, the moment came that shocked the entire galaxy. 6 human destroyers, 3 of them already marked as destroyed by Krathix sensors, coordinated a simultaneous attack on Zekthor's flagship. The massive command ship had the best shields in the fleet. It should have been untouchable. But the 6 destroyers did not attack randomly. They had studied the shield patterns during the first battle. They knew where the weak points appeared when the shields recharged. All 6 ships fired their nuclear missiles at exactly the same moment, at exactly the same weak point. The flagship's shields collapsed. Secondary explosions rippled through the ship. Zekthor watched his command deck fill with smoke and fire. Emergency systems screamed warnings. His ship was dying. Abandon ship, he ordered. All crew to escape pods. As Zekthor's escape pod launched, he watched his fleet through the small window. The Krathix armada was breaking apart. Ships fled in different directions. Some tried to regroup but found themselves surrounded by human vessels. The coordination that had made the Krathix unstoppable was gone, replaced by panic and chaos. The human fleet pressed their advantage. They had lost over 100 ships, but the Krathix had lost more than 400. The math was brutal and clear. The invaders were beaten. Admiral Webb watched from his command ship as the Krathix fleet scattered. Cease fire, he ordered. Let them run. Focus on rescue and recovery. His tactical officer looked surprised. Sir, we could destroy more of them. Why let them escape? Webb's face was tired and sad. Because we want them to go home and tell everyone what happened here. We want the galaxy to know that humanity will not be conquered. Let them spread the word. Across the galaxy, the species watching through their sensors could not believe what they were seeing. The Krathix had been routed. The empire that had never lost a battle had been defeated by a species that had only been in space for 50 years. In the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Veltoth stood and spoke to the assembly. We must reconsider our understanding of these humans. They won not through superior technology or numbers. They won through determination and sacrifice. They are willing to pay prices that other species would never accept. Another ambassador asked the question on everyone's mind. Should we fear them? They fight like berserkers. They do not care about losses. Veltoth thought for a long moment. No, we should not fear them. We should respect them. They did not choose this fight. It was forced upon them. They only want peace. But they have proven that if you bring war to humanity, they will meet you with fury. In the wreckage of the Krathix flagship, human rescue teams found Zekthor's escape pod. They pulled him from the debris and took him prisoner. As they escorted him to their ship, he looked at the young human soldier guarding him. Why? Zekthor asked. Why do you fight this way? You sacrifice so much. Is nothing sacred to you? The soldier looked at him with eyes that seemed older than his face. We fight this way because we have no choice. Our history is full of near extinctions. We survived ice ages and plagues. We survived our own wars. We learned that when you fight for survival, nothing else matters. You do whatever it takes. You pay whatever it costs. Zekthor understood then. The humans were not cruel. They were not violent by nature. They were simply survivors who had been pushed too far, and that made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. 3 months after the Battle of Luna, a human delegation arrived at the Galactic Council headquarters. The station orbited a neutral star system far from any claimed territory. Ships from dozens of species filled the docking bays. Everyone wanted to see the humans who had defeated the Krathiks. Admiral Sarah Chen walked into the council chambers with a small group of officers. She wore her military uniform, which showed signs of hasty repairs. The medals on her chest had been earned during the recent battles. Her face was tired but determined. The council chamber fell silent as she approached the central platform. Hundreds of eyes from dozens of different species watched her, some with curiosity, some with fear, some with respect. Ambassador Veltoth, who now served as the council leader, gestured for her to speak. "Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Council, we welcome you. We have watched your struggle with great interest. Please tell us what you wish to say." Chen stepped forward and placed a datapad on the display table. Numbers and images appeared on the screens around the chamber. "I come to report the results of the Krathiks' invasion of human space. Our losses were significant. 40,000 personnel killed in action, 127 ships destroyed. The Mars colony suffered major damage. Earth's orbital infrastructure was partially destroyed. The numbers were staggering. Some of the ambassadors whispered among themselves. Those were terrible losses for such a young species. Chen continued, her voice steady. The Krathiks' losses were greater. 446 warships destroyed or captured. Approximately 200,000 enemy personnel killed or taken prisoner. War Admiral Zekthor is currently in human custody. The Krathiks' fleet has completely withdrawn from human space. The chamber erupted in noise. Some species cheered. Others argued. An ambassador from a prey species that had suffered under Krathiks' rule stood up, tears in his eyes. "Is it true? Did you really defeat them? Completely?" Chen nodded. "Yes, the Krathiks' invasion force has been destroyed. They will not threaten humanity again." An ambassador from a warrior culture, one that had tried and failed to fight the Krathiks decades ago, stood next. "Admiral, I must ask the question everyone is thinking. How? How did you accomplish this? We have studied your technology. It is good but not exceptional. Your numbers were smaller, your experience less. How did you win?" Chen was quiet for a moment. She looked around the chamber at all the different species. Finally she spoke. "You all have warrior cultures. Cultures where the strong dominate and the weak serve. You fight for glory, for honor, for territory. These are noble reasons." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But humanity has a survivor culture. Every human alive today is descended from ancestors who survived terrible things. Ice ages that covered our world. Diseases that killed millions. Predators that hunted us. Droughts and floods. And yes, our own wars against each other." The chamber was completely silent now. Every species listened. "We do not fight because we are strong," Chen continued. "We fight because we refuse to die. When a human ship loses power, the crew keeps fighting by hand. When weapons fail, we use the ship itself as a weapon. When hope is gone, we create new hope through sheer stubbornness. This is not courage. This is not heroism. This is something deeper. This is survival instinct refined over hundreds of thousands of years." She activated another display. It showed footage from the Battle of Luna. A destroyer with no weapons left ramming a Krathiks battleship. A carrier crashing into the moon to destroy one more enemy ship. Crew members in damaged vessels manually firing guns when the computers failed. "The Krathiks expected us to calculate the odds and surrender," Chen said. "But humans do not think that way. We do not fight until the odds turn against us. We fight until we physically cannot continue. And sometimes we keep fighting even then." An elderly ambassador from a peaceful species spoke up. "But Admiral, the cost. So many deaths, so many ships destroyed. Was it worth it?" Chen's face hardened. "Ambassador, if we had surrendered, the Krathiks would have enslaved our entire species. Billions of people. All of our children. Our future. Yes, 40,000 died. But 8 billion survived free. Every human who gave their life in those battles did so, knowing they were saving everyone they loved. We remember them. We honor them. And we make sure their sacrifice was not wasted." The chamber was quiet again. Many species understood now. Humanity was not powerful because of technology or numbers. They were powerful because they would pay any price for freedom. Ambassador Veltoth stood. Admiral Chen, your words have given us much to think about. But I must ask, what does humanity want now? You have proven yourself in battle. You have earned respect. Some species fear you. Others admire you. What are your intentions? Chen pulled out another data pad. We come with two proposals. First, humanity wishes to offer defense treaties to any species threatened by aggressive empires. We will patrol the outer systems and respond to calls for help. We do this not for payment or territory, but because we believe freedom is worth defending. Several ambassadors from smaller species immediately began talking excitedly among themselves. Protection from the humans. Safety from empires like the Krathiks. Second, Chen continued, we request that the Krathiks prisoners in our custody be returned to their homeworld under one condition. They must spread the word about what happened here. We want every aggressive empire in this galaxy to know that humanity will defend itself and its allies. We want them to understand that attacking us will cost them everything. Veltoth nodded slowly. A wise strategy. Use mercy as a message. Show that you can be terrible in war but reasonable in peace. He looked around the chamber. I believe we have much to discuss. But speaking personally, I welcome humanity to the galactic community. You have taught us something valuable. Strength is not just about technology or numbers. Sometimes strength is simply refusing to give up. After the meeting, Chen stood on the observation deck of the station. She looked out at the stars. Behind her, one of her officers approached. Admiral, 12 species have already requested defense treaties. The Council is considering making us an official peacekeeping force. Chen nodded but did not smile. Good, but remind everyone back home. We build more ships. We train more crews. We prepare for the next threat. Peace is wonderful, but it never lasts forever. Humanity must always be ready. Across the galaxy, word spread quickly. The humans had defeated the Krathiks. The empire that had seemed unstoppable had been broken by a young species that refused to surrender. Other aggressive civilizations quietly reconsidered their expansion plans. Some empires that had been preparing invasions of weaker neighbors suddenly found diplomatic solutions more appealing. In his cell on a human prison ship, Zekthor heard about the Galactic Council meeting. He understood now that he had been part of a message. The humans had spared him not out of kindness, but to make sure everyone knew what happened when you challenged them. A young human guard brought him food. Zekthor looked at the soldier. Your species will never know true peace, will you? You will always be preparing for war. The guard thought about this. Maybe you are right, but we would rather prepare for war and have peace than want peace and get war. Our history taught us that lesson the hard way. Zekthor had no answer to that. The humans had won not just the battles, but the war, and more importantly, they had won the respect of the galaxy. The fearless invaders had laughed at humanity. Now the galaxy watched in silence as the first human fleet patrolled the stars, guardians of a new era. 6 months after the war ended, life in human space slowly returned to normal. The Mars colony was being rebuilt. New ships rolled out of the shipyards to replace those lost in battle. The names of the fallen were carved into a memorial on Earth that stretched for miles. 40,000 names, each one a person who chose to fight rather than surrender. President Chen stood at the memorial during the dedication ceremony. Families of the fallen gathered to honor their loved ones. The mood was sad but also proud. These people had saved humanity. They would never be forgotten. They did not die because they were warriors, Chen said in her speech. They died because they were protectors. They understood that freedom has a price. They paid that price so the rest of us could live free. She paused, looking at the endless rows of names. We honor them not with more war, but by building a future worthy of their sacrifice. Across the galaxy, the effects of humanity's victory rippled outward. The Krathiks Empire began to fracture. Without their aura of invincibility, the subject species they had conquered started to rebel. The empire that had lasted for centuries began to crumble from within. Civil war erupted as different Krathiks factions fought for control. Other aggressive empires watched and learned. The Vex Dominion, which had been preparing to invade 3 star systems, quietly canceled their military expansion. The hierarchy of Tal, known for conquering primitive species, suddenly discovered an interest in peaceful diplomacy. Nobody wanted to be the next empire to face humanity in battle. But not everyone learned the right lesson. In a distant part of the galaxy, The warlords of the Serpent Syndicate watched the recordings of human battles. They studied the tactics. They analyzed the strategies. Unlike the Krathiks, they did not dismiss humans as weak. Instead, they began preparing for the day they might face humanity themselves. At a military academy on Earth's moon, a class of young cadets studied the Battle of Luna. Their instructor, a veteran of the war, played footage of a destroyer that continued fighting for 7 minutes after life support failed. The crew had used emergency suits to manually operate the weapon systems. 7 minutes of combat while breathing bottled air and working in near-freezing temperatures. 7 minutes that destroyed 2 enemy ships. A cadet raised her hand. Instructor, the Krathiks had better technology, better shields, better weapons. Why did they lose? The instructor thought carefully about his answer. He had fought in both major battles. He had seen friends die. He had seen impossible victories. They lost because they had limits. They would retreat if casualties got too high. They would pull back if the cost seemed too great. Humanity does not have those limits, not when our survival is at stake. He zoomed in on the footage showing the crew of that destroyer. Men and women working together in the frozen darkness. Remember this always. Humanity does not fight to win. We fight as if we have already lost everything and have nothing left to lose. That mindset makes us terrifying to face. Our enemies must destroy us completely or not at all. There is no middle ground, another cadet spoke up. But sir, is that not a weakness? We sacrifice so much. We take such terrible losses. The instructor shook his head. No, it is our greatest strength, because our enemies know that defeating us will cost them everything. Most wars are about calculations. How much will this cost versus how much will we gain? Against humanity, that calculation always shows it costs too much. So they choose not to fight us at all. In the Galactic Council chambers, representatives from 14 species signed defense treaties with humanity. These were smaller species that had lived in fear of larger empires. Now they had protection. Human ships patrolled their borders. Human bases were established in their systems. Admiral Webb commanded the new Terran Defense Fleet. 150 ships dedicated to protecting human space and allied territories. The ships were newer and better equipped than those that had fought the Krathiks, but they maintained the same basic design philosophy: function over form, survival over style. Webb stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the tactical display. Green icons showed human ships. Blue icons showed allied vessels. Red icons marked known hostile forces. The red icon stayed far away from the green and blue ones. Sir, his tactical officer reported. Long-range sensors detect a Krathic scouting party entering the outer rim of the Zeta sector. They are heading toward an allied colony. Webb did not hesitate. Dispatch Squadron 7. Tell them to intercept and escort the Krathic's vessels out of allied space. Use minimum force. If they resist, destroy them. The squadron arrived within hours. The Krathic's ship saw the human warships approaching and immediately changed course. They fled without firing a single shot. The war had changed them. They no longer assumed victory. They knew the cost of fighting humans. Back on Earth, in a small apartment in New Tokyo, a woman named Maria Santos read a letter. It was from the government. Her son, Lieutenant Carlos Santos, had been killed during the Battle of Mars. He died when the destroyer Relentless rammed a Krathik's cruiser. He was 23 years old. The letter included a medal and a message from the president. It spoke of honor and sacrifice. It thanked her for her son's service. Maria read it 3 times, tears running down her face. Later that day, she visited the memorial. She found her son's name carved in stone among thousands of others. She placed flowers at the base of the wall. A young couple stood nearby, also leaving flowers. Their daughter had served on the same ship. It is not fair, Maria said quietly. They were so young. They had so much life ahead of them. The other mother nodded, wiping her eyes. No, it is not fair. But they chose to stand between us and the darkness. They chose to fight so we would not have to. That means something. Maria looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, human ships patrolled the stars, protecting Earth, protecting the Allies, making sure the sacrifice of the fallen was not wasted. Yes, she said softly. That means everything. In a classroom on a distant alien world, a teacher showed recordings of the human war to her students. These were not warrior species. They were peaceful people who had suffered under aggressive empires for generations. Now they had hope. The humans are not like the conquerors we have known, the teacher explained. They do not seek to dominate us. They do not demand tribute or service. They simply want to be left in peace and will defend those who cannot defend themselves. A young student raised his tentacle. Teacher, why do they help us? What do they gain? The teacher considered this. I asked a human officer the same question. She told me that humanity remembers what it is like to be helpless. They remember being prey. They remember when survival was never certain. So now that they are strong, they choose to help those who are weak, not because they must, but because they believe it is right. The galaxy had changed. The old order of strong empires dominating weak species began to fade. Humanity did not rule the galaxy. They did not want to. But their presence changed the balance of power. Aggression now came with consequences. Bullies now faced opposition. 3 years after the war, President Chen gave her final speech before stepping down. She stood in the same chambers where she had ordered the activation of the Emergency Fleet Protocol. We won the war, she said, but we must not let victory make us arrogant. We must continue to build, continue to prepare, continue to train, because peace is not permanent. Threats will always emerge. We must be ready to face them. She paused and looked at the new generation of leaders who would take over. But we must also remember why we fight, not for conquest, not for glory. We fight to protect. We fight so that our children can grow up free. We fight so that others can have the same chance. That is what makes us different from the empires we oppose. As Chen left office, the human fleet continued to grow. New technologies were developed. New tactics were tested. The military academy graduated new officers every year. Humanity learned from every battle and improved constantly. The Krathix Empire never recovered. It split into dozens of smaller nations, some of which eventually made peace with humanity. War Admiral Zekthor lived out his days in exile, writing his memoirs. In them, he described humanity as the most dangerous species he had ever encountered. Not because they were strong, but because they refused to acknowledge when they were beaten. The galaxy watched. The galaxy learned. The galaxy remembered the day the fearless invaders laughed at humanity. The day the galaxy held its breath. The day the first human fleet arrived and proved that sometimes the will to survive is stronger than any weapon. And in the depths of space, human ships continued their patrol. Silent guardians watching over a new era. They flew not with arrogance, but with purpose. They carried the lessons of their history. They honored the memories of the fallen, and they remained always ready. Because humanity had learned the oldest and most important lesson of all. Survival is not about being the strongest. It is about refusing to give up no matter the cost. And that refusal, that stubborn determination to endure, had made humanity something more than just another species in the galaxy. It had made them survivors. And survivors do not lose. They simply refuse to stop fighting.